Okay, good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Bereshit class. Today, we're just going to establish and talk about one central idea, which is, does the punishment which Kayin or Cain received, did it fit the crime? Was it appropriate, what he received? If, in fact, he killed his brother intentionally, premeditated, surely he should have been given the death penalty, whereas the punishment seems to imply he is given the punishment of someone who kills unintentionally because he's given banishment. He goes into exile, as it were. It's almost like he's going, so the punishment doesn't seem to totally fit the crime. Additionally, if we think also back to Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, what punishment did they receive? They were told that if they would eat from the Eitz Hadat, from the tree of knowledge, that they would die, and yet they didn't. So how do we understand that one? So that one I could possibly understand and explain, that death was brought into the world. They were meant to live forever, and instead, God changed that to, you'll have a finite life, and instead of living forever, you will have children. Okay, and then your progeny can carry on after you. But here, when trying to understand the punishment of Kayin, we need to have a look at the psukim. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to read a few psukim, a few verses from Perek Daled of Bereshit, from chapter 4 of Genesis. So here we go. Vayomer Kayin el hevel achiv. So again, this is right after Hashem tells Kayin, or we learned last week, you can do better, basically, and and if you can't do better, then sin is always waiting for you. But you can rule over it. You can really do better than that. You can really rule over your evil inclination. But very next, it says, Vayomer Kayin el hevel achiv. Kayin said to Hevel, his brother, doesn't tell us what he said. Vayi biotam basadeh, it was when they were in the field. Vayakom Kayin el hevel achiv, vayahagehu. And Kayin came upon his brother Hevel and killed him. Vayomer Hashem el Kayin. God said to Kayin, Ei Hevel achicha, where is your brother Hevel? Vayomer lo yadati. Kayin said, I do not know. Hashomer achi anochi? Am I my brother's keeper? Vayomer me asita? What have you done? Kol deme achicha tzoakim elai min ha'adama. The voice, the sound of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Ve'ata arurata, and now you shall be cursed. Min ha'adama, from the ground, asher patzta et piha, which opened its mouth, lakachat et demei achicha miyadecha, that took the blood of your brother from your hand. You will be cursed from the ground that opened its mouth to take the blood of your brother from your hand. Ki ta'avod et adama, that when you will work the land, lo tosef tet kocha lach, na v'na tiyeh ba'aretz. If you will work the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall become a wanderer on earth. Vayomer Kayin el Hashem gadol avoni min neso. And Kayin said to God, my punishment is too great to bear. Hen gerashti oti, since you have banished me, hayom, today, me'al penei hadama, from upon the face of the ground, u'mipanecha esater, and I must hide my face from you, v'hayiti na v'nad ba'aretz, and I have to wander the land, v'ya kol motzei yehageni, because anyone who will find me will kill me. Vayomer lo Hashem, and God said to him, Lachein kol horeg Kayin, therefore whoever kills Kayin, shivatayim yukam, sevenfold will fall upon him. A sevenfold punishment will fall upon him. Vayasem Hashem leKayin ot, and God placed a sign upon Kayin, levelti hakot oto kol motza'o, so that anyone who met him would realize who it was and not kill him. Vayetze Kayin milifnei Hashem, and Kayin left or went out from before Hashem. Vayeshev be'eretz Nod, and he dwelled in the land of Nod, Kidmat Eden, to the east of Eden. I'm reading these psukim. I'm trying to understand, really I am, which is, I don't get it. If Kayin killed Hevel deliberately, which is what it seems to be implied in those psukim, he has no remorse and tries to hide it from Hashem. Hashem then says, here's your punishment. You're going to be banished. And Kayin complains about that. And Hashem says, okay, I'll make sure that no one kills you. I'll put a mark on your head, and that's it. And it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. How can it be that he gets off with a soft punishment and he complains about his soft punishment? If he killed Kayin, then what's happened? If he killed Hevel deliberately, why is the punishment so mild? And obviously I have my own presentation, which I'll show you from Al HaTorah. But before that, I want to open it up to you. Do you think that this is fair, what's going on here?
I think Hashem had an advanced knowledge of genetics. You have to have a broader genetic base for the future millions and billions.
Okay, so
I'm only joking. I'm just saying that, you couldn't just go forward. First of all, that would have left nobody, right? That would have left just Adam and Eve. And since they had received punishment, being told they would not live forever, their children were already fully grown. It's unlikely she would have had more children, notwithstanding that Sarah had a baby when she was 99,
I mean, we're going to have that later in a few psukim that Adam and Eve have another child called Seth. But if we go with the midrashic material that the Torah is not listing all the progeny, it's only listing those which are noteworthy, and that there were other children, and that maybe Kain and Hevel had sisters or other siblings. That is not mentioned here. The limited DNA pool, I agree with you, it's a very small sampling, but even that, whether you've got 1 or 2 or you have 10, it's still a very limited size to reproduce, to populate the whole world. So it implies to me that there's got to be more than genetics. I appreciate the perspective, but I think there has to be more than just that. So what is it here? What is Hashem trying to teach by presenting a punishment of death? But then when it actually comes into reality, Hashem is like, you know what? I'm going to soften a little bit. What's going on?
To forgive is divine.
Are you going Alexander Pope on me there? Yeah, I mean, sure. I think we can learn from here the acknowledgement of even if one deserves a punishment, I'm going to hold back from giving it, for sure. That's definitely a divine gift. Anyone else?
You're setting up some kind of scheme where it's a given that if you do something wrong, that you get punished, and that the punishment is proportional to the crime. And we see many examples in Tanakh and in real life where that doesn't happen. And you're before any crime's been committed, you're going into it thinking that there's some perfect divine justice.
So again, Robbie, you're answering the question, which is God is going to teach us something fundamental, and it's something for humanity, and something which my mother was hinting at there, which is just because you can do a thing, even if something is deserving, doesn't mean that we have to do it, that there might be an educational benefit, there might be a sociological benefit to this. But all that being said, why have the consequence? Why give a consequence if you're not going to act on it? Like I hear you, like there's cause and effect, which is we don't need to live by rules. Like there was plenty of time where showing grace, showing mercy, kindness helps a lot. But why give the threat? Why say that man will be killed if they eat from the garden? Why have a punishment of that someone who kills will be killed if we're not ourselves going to keep up with it? Esther?
It's just occurring to me the first thing that Kayin says to Hashem is, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Is this in some way Hashem's not saying yes, but saying yes in the long term? That yes, you are your brother's keeper, and other people will be your keeper.
Absolutely. It wasn't Sam Israel was not the first person to say, "I am my brother's keeper." This is a fundamental of Judaism 101, that we are responsible. We're all arevim zelas, that we have moral responsibility to take on each other. So those famous line of Hashomer achi anochi, am I my brother's keeper? In the absolute affirmative, yes, we are responsible for one another. And so therefore what? Perhaps the punishment is fitting because you've killed your brother, your responsibility now is to populate the world. You can't vanish. Another question I didn't ask you, by the way, is who is Kayin scared is going to kill him? And my mother said there wasn't enough people in the world. Well, we don't think his parents are going to kill him. So who's he worried about? So some commentaries suggest that's another proof that there are other human beings around. Another possibility, he's worried about wild animals. But it would seem to be there are other human beings who may want to do him harm for killing Hevel.
But following this precept of Hashem not killing Cain, Israel is the only country in the world that has never had a statutory death penalty, with the obvious notable exception of Eichmann, where they created a law and then immediately cancelled it after the deed was done. So obviously Israel does as a nation follow the same precept, that no matter how heinous the crime, with that notable appalling exception, they are not going to kill people judicially.
Absolutely. It's extremely difficult, even in, forget Israeli supreme law and all that, and the civil law side, in Jewish law, it's very difficult when we were having capital cases to kill anyone. The system of absolute certainty, not beyond the measure, not beyond doubt, but absolute certainty requires a situation where virtually impossible to put anyone to death, which is again showing our measure of we will give people opportunity for rehabilitation. So with all that being said, is that just our presentation that basically God gives a punishment or threatens a punishment, but then doesn't do it because educationally it's better not to? He's teaching us a lesson. As we are students of the Torah, we're learning something. Perhaps, I think if we have a look at our Pakan al HaTorah, we can try and get into some of that. So I'm just going to share my screen and work through some of the questions here. Says as follows: examining the evidence. The enigmatic verse of Bereshit Daled Chet 4:8 reports on the first killing and death in history. As we read it, Vayomer Kayin el Hevel Achiv, Vayibi otam basadeh, Vayakom Kayin el Hevel Achiv, Vayahagehu. Kayin spoke to Hevel, his brother, and it happened that when they were in the field, Kayin rose up against Hevel, his brother, and killed him. Coming in the wake of a bitter dispute between Kayin and Hevel, it is natural to assume that this was a case of intentional and perhaps even premeditated fratricide. But before we jump to this conclusion, let us first consider the textual evidence we possess regarding the punishment meted out by Hashem, Kayin's appeal of his sentencing, and his motivation for and possible premeditation of the act itself. Does the punishment fit the crime? Intentional murder is a capital crime, and thus, if Kayin deliberately killed Hevel, one might have expected Hashem to administer the death penalty. Yet Kayin is spared such a sentence and is instead informed that he will be cursed from the land and forced to live the life of a wanderer. This punishment is very reminiscent of that given to the inadvertent killer, who is exiled from his home. Did Kayin receive this less severe penalty because of technical reasons? Or were there fundamental mitigating circumstances which made his act more similar to that of an unintentional murderer? And as we talked about this before, after someone want to share? One second. After receiving his sentence, Kayin responds to Hashem. Kayin said to Hashem, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me out this day from the surface of the ground, and I will hide from your face, and I will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. And it will happen that whoever finds me will kill me." Hashem said to him, "Therefore, whoever slays Kayin, vengeance will be taken on him sevenfold." Hashem placed a sign for Kayin so that anyone who finds him should not kill him. Though Kayin's words are open to interpretation, his reaction seems somewhat surprising. If Kayin was an intentional murderer deserving of death, how does he have the temerity to protest that his punishment was overly severe and might bring about his death? And if Kayin's complaint had no merit, why does Hashem feel compelled to address his grievance by providing Kayin with a special protective sign? Finally, the Torah gives no indication that Kayin killed Hevel in the heat of the moment, as an immediate response to Hashem's rejection of his korban. To the contrary, in the interim, Hashem first speaks to Kayin. Kayin speaks to Hevel, and they go out to the field together. Did their discussion in the field begin innocently, but somehow escalate into a murderous brawl? Or alternatively, was the conversation part of Kayin's premeditated plot to catch his brother by surprise? Would it not be odd that Kayin's first action immediately after being chastised by Hashem would be to orchestrate the murder of his brother? Did he really think that doing so would achieve his goal of ingratiating himself with Hashem. Now to this, we have two main approaches. Option number one, Kayin's an intentional murder. And option number two, he did it unintentionally. So we're going to have a look at this. Kayin intended to kill Hevel and was fully cognizant of the consequences of his actions. This approach subdivides as to whether Kayin was guilty of first degree premeditated or second degree unplanned murder. And I want to express that the reason why I'm even going into this is, if ever we learn these stories, whether it's on Sunday school or it's at a day school or whether it's on Shabbat morning groups, most of us have learned this story as a child. And our understanding is going to be that Kayin killed his brother Hevel deliberately. Okay, our only question was it first degree or second degree? Was it premeditated, or was it they got angry and he killed him? But nowhere do we think that this was accidental. Why is that? And it's something which I talk about a lot, which is we are measured, our understanding of Chumash is more based on our teachers and our commentaries than we really realize. And that truth is that there's so much ingrained in us that I don't even think about this question really. Did Kayin really kill him? Did he mean to do it? Was that his plan? Did he think about it? Because I just think, no, Kayin killed Hevel. The only question is, did he plan it, or were they just angry? I don't even think about, oh, maybe they were wrestling and it happened by mistake, like and none of that was the plan. I mean, let's have a look here and see the commentaries that we're going to go here. We've got Bereshit Rabbah and Tanchuma. Those are two midrashim sources which Rashi often brings. Then I've got Rav Yosef Bechor Shor. I got the Chizkuni, the Ramban, and Seforno. Those are all super commentaries on Rashi, and they will comment on Rashi, they'll build on it. And I've got Abarbanel, who is a little bit separate, but a lot of these are very similar schools of learning, okay? They build upon each other. Rashi on the Midrashim, and then the other commentaries on Rashi. So it's no surprise here that they're all doing it, but this will be fundamental, the type of approach that we will learn as children when we first hear this story. Okay, and again, not that as children they tell you this is a midrash or this is Rashi. Rather, when they explain the story, they tell the story with the Rashi or the midrashic lens without telling us as we're doing it. So it's as follows: Vayomer Kayin el Hevel achiv. That's his motivation. Rashi, the Bechor Shor, and Ramban all explain that Kayin's words to Hevel facilitated his conspiracy to kill Hevel. According to them, Kayin committed first-degree murder. Why? Out of jealousy over his rejected sacrifice, which is what? Not Kayin taking responsibility for offering a mediocre sacrifice, or understanding that Hashem is not a vending machine that he answers our tefillot always. But someone else got what I wanted, so I'm going to blame them. Alternatively, the various opinions in the Midrash suggest that it was a separate argument while Kayin and Hevel were ordering in the field, which led to the murder. Now, if you want to know what they're arguing about, there are two possibilities according to the Midrash. Either they were fighting over who would rule the entire world. How are we going to divide it up? We're the progeny of Adam and Eve. Who owns the world, which is the oldest, which is we're going to fight over land. The second one is, according to Midrash, they both had twin sisters, and they were arguing over who was going to marry who. Again, part of that question of how do we continue life on earth? So no surprises there. The Midrash is suggesting that human nature is still there, which is we fight over food, we fight over land, we fight over resources, and also we fight over women. Okay, continuing here, Vayahargehu. All the other instances in the Torah of this shorish of Hey Resh Gimel refer to intentional murder. It's very difficult to hide from that one. And then here, Lo Yadati, I didn't know, Hashomer Achi Anochi, am I my brother's keeper? Rashi explains that this is simply a bold-faced lie, which is, how could he have the chutzpah, the cheek, the gall, the arrogance to lie to Hashem? Kayin's punishment. These commentators must grapple with the question of why Kayin was not punished by death. Rabbi Nehemiah in the Midrash and the Chizkuni suggests that Kayin did not receive the death penalty because his crime was committed before Hashem gave this instruction, which is true. These laws are only given much later. And so therefore, it wasn't explicit that Hashem had never told Kayin, by the way, if you kill another human being, you will be killed. Alternatively, the Radak proposes that Hashem did not want to leave the world desolate. Chizkuni also offers a second possibility, that Kayin was not killed because he received no warning. There was no hatra'ah immediately prior to the murder. So going back to all those answers, my mother began right at the beginning, which is God wanted there to be human beings in the world. They wanted there to be a wide variety of genetic gene pool. That's the Radak. You answered based on the position of Rav David Kimchi of Provence, who gave that answer over 1,000 years ago. Okay. Carrying on. Gadol Avoni Minzor. It's greater, the sin is greater than I can bear. The Ibn Ezra and the Ramban interpret this as Kayin's admission of sin and not a protest of the severity of the punishment. Barbanel adds that Kayin is acknowledging that he is deserving of death. Rashi, on the other hand, views these words as Kayin's appeal for divine mercy, despite the gravity of his crime. And that's often where I sit with this, which is, it's not that I deserve it, it's that I hope that you will, with your chaim, with your graciousness, that you will show me compassion. Kol motzi yehargeni, all who will find me shall kill me. Ramban explains that Kayin is asking that he not die at the hands of wild animals. Okay, that's the Ramban. He doesn't think there were other human beings. He's scared that an animal will kill him. Barbanel, though, understands that Kayin is wishing for immediate death. An interesting thing that the Barbanel is saying that it would have been easier for Hashem to have killed him. It was better and more educational for Kayin to live with the fact that he had killed his brother, which is, however bad he felt immediately after, he would feel even worse as he lived with the fact that he killed his brother. And he was saying, I don't want to die later on, I'd rather die now. And then at the end there, Kol hareg Kayin shivatayim yukam, whoever kills Kayin will have a sevenfold punishment. According to Rashi, this pasuk means that Kayin will receive his due punishment of death in 7 generations' time. And that, my friends, we'll have a look at next week. Now, let's have a look at this side of the unintentional. And this is, as I said, is a very different position, and one which I think perhaps is not taught when we are young, and is far more in the sphere of adult education. Unintentional. Kayin's killing of Hevel was unintentional. Why? Either because he struck him without intent to kill. Okay, he was just hitting him and he landed badly. Or because he had no prior comprehension of the concept of death, which is true. No one has died until this point. How does he know that by punching him in the head is more dangerous than kicking him in the stomach, perhaps? Vayahargehu. How do we deal with that? And he killed him, and Kayin's motivation. According to this position, Vayahargehu can also refer to an act committed without full intent. The Akedat Yitzchak proposes that Kayin's act was mitigated by the fact that it occurred during an altercation. And the Netziv develops the possibility that Kayin was trying to enslave Hevel and was beating him as a master beats a slave. Again, this is not saying that Kayin's a good guy here. It's just saying he had no idea that by hitting him, he was going to kill him. So he was probably giving him a good bashing, but he didn't mean to kill him. How do we express this? Lo yadati hashomer achi anochi. I didn't know, am I my brother's keeper? This approach could explain that Kayin was really telling the truth, and having never before encountered death, was unsure of whether Hevel might recover. Perhaps he thought he was sleeping and he would be fine. Again, imagine he hits him and he falls and hits the back of his head on a rock. How would he know? Kayin's punishment. These commentators all point out that positing an accidental killing would be the simplest way to account for why Kayin received the punishment of exile similar to that of an unintentional murderer. Kol motzi yahargeni, all who find me shall kill me. According to this opinion, Kayin is claiming that he's undeserving of death. And kol hareg Kayin shivatayim yukam, and all who kill Kayin will have a sevenfold punishment. Hashem agrees with Kayin that he is indeed deserving of death. Deserving of protection. See, Freudian there. I was thinking of that back. So just summarizing here, the way that Al-HaTorah puts it, Al-HaTorah does not present our position, which is, this is something for Kayin to learn for throughout his life, which is, you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life. And this position of Hashem's kindness, which needs to be placed in there. We saw that a little bit towards the side of the intentional killing. But when it comes to unintentional, it just seems, okay, Hashem is doing the fit punishment. But I like that we were, working as a group there, that we came up with this notion that this was not what punishment was fitting, but again, Hashem's midah of, I'm not going to give you what you deserve, I'm going to give you what is going to be beneficial to you to learn from, to struggle through, and to grow through. And that's very much how we live our lives, of struggling through things and growing through things. That Hashem gives us challenges, and sometimes they are hard, but generally we grow through them. Any comments, questions, ideas that you want to share at the end of this session?
Just a thought here. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if we heard din v'rachamim badin as the two parts of the scale that we have to consider whenever there's any din in place. And I think this is representative of din v'rachamim badin. And the additional thing, we said harag as opposed to ratzach, he killed him as opposed to murdered him. And obviously, there's premeditation. There didn't seem to be premeditation. He responded angrily. It wasn't one of those murders where they're trying to hide evidence. It's just a couple of thoughts.
No, very good. I mean, again, I think he's trying to connect, according to the commentaries, that the notion of Hey Reish Gimel, of Harag, and Rotseach, Reish Sadichet, are interchangeable, that those are killing, murdering, that those are intentional. It's for us to try and say, there's no other case of Harag, meaning unintentional, except here. So what is it telling me? Is that something else? the whole notion of din and rachamim and understanding God as Yud-Kei Vav-Kei versus God as Elohim, the God of strict justice with the God of mercy, and where does God factor all that in? I mean, again, I love this notion that God is acting with Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, with mercy, when he could be acting with Elohim, with complete judgment.
Don't you think that by giving him a lighter sentence, if you like, he was hoping that he would be rehabilitated? I'm thinking about, you know, the penal system in this country, America, as opposed to, say, Scandinavia. Here we give people these ludicrous sentences, hundreds of years in prison. You have no hope. You can never, ever be rehabilitated. You can never become part of society. More enlightened countries, they look at it very differently. They try to rehabilitate people. In some countries in Scandinavia, in fact, people who have prison sentences for non-violent crimes find themselves able to go to work Monday to Friday and just be in prison at the weekend. And when they've completed their sentence, they come out and they're normal people.
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, a little hard to answer the broken penal system of the United States al regal achat, on one foot, but I certainly agree with you that very long punishments don't necessarily help in any form of rehabilitation, as opposed to here, where he's committed some kind of, I mean, Hevel has died as a course to his actions, whether he did it deliberately or not. Something has to happen here, but again, clearly Hashem's goal is educational and not necessarily purely punishment. Susie? Okay. All right, we will. Yeah, you muted yourself. Susie, there you go. Go again, Susie?
No, Gloria.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm on the phone because I couldn't get it in the computer. Anyway, no, for me, I'm sorry I came late, but your whole discussion and presentation of the alternate commentaries makes it for me much easier to live with the story, because I always hated, oh, Cain is the bad one, Abel's the good one, and you know, it doesn't, it just didn't sit very well. But this way, that both people are seen as human beings, and I wouldn't go so far as to say they're worthy of being our ancestors, but they are seen as complete human beings who have possibility of, even Kayin, who have possibility of living decent lives. So for me, that's what it does for me. It makes the story more, how should I say, not only more comfortable, but more realistic, you know, something that you can live with in our time.
Absolutely, Gloria. I think that's a great point, which is understanding the notion that we're not reading children's stories. And again, how we can get past that and realizing it's not one good character versus a bad character, and going beyond how we first learn these stories as children, and realizing that every year we're trying to develop ourselves and seeing, you know what, there are, you know, even Kayin, who looks like he's a particularly negative character, who's down on his luck and always blaming other people, might actually have some rewarding qualities and things to learn from. I love that. Susie, how are you doing? You're okay to share? Yeah.
Yeah, in support of keeping with the story, the idea that, and since I'm sticking up for the underdog here, it says that Cain and Abel, you know, Cain was talking to Abel. It doesn't really say what the discussion was about. We don't really know both sides of the story then. And then the next line, when it says that Cain got up, it's like he's underneath. It's kind of maybe that his brother Abel got on him and pushed him down, because it specifically says he got up, which means he was under. So that's why I'm saying maybe it wasn't a form of self-defense, or he pushed him too hard or something like that. But I would just say that Hevel created something there that caused this to become a physical altercation.
Absolutely, and I think that's to Gloria's point, which is we shouldn't whitewash the story as Hevel being this innocent,
Right.
perfect person who offers the perfect sacrifice, and through no fault of his own, he's killed by his brother when he's in the field. And it's like, no, you know what? Perhaps there was more to this. Perhaps there was a whole competition. Perhaps there was difficulties here. So absolutely, I think there is, it could even be that Hevel was fighting with Kayin, and Kayin, as you said, Kayin gets up from being in the lower position and hits him back, and yeah, for sure. And so we can see here that instead of reading these things in a narrow or in a first glance, there's a lot more to these stories. Okay, that's it for today. Next week, we will look a bit